Hi, I'm Scott Postma, President of Kepler Education and the Director of the Poima Institute for Faith, Culture, and Creativity. And this is the first video in a series that I'm doing called The Musings of a Man of Letters. And really, it's just me thinking about ideas, education, culture, faith, these kinds of things. And today I want to muse a little bit about the kind of folly that is someone choosing poison over food simply because it's free. So let's imagine a silly scenario where you go to a restaurant and you are given a menu, and on that menu you have a choice of a nice steak dinner that's going to cost you $50 or $100, or there's cyanide, and you can have the cyanide. It's absolutely free. Okay. Silly illustration, but we all know the end result of that. You have either a wonderful meal, a great experience with a steak dinner, and you walk away full, flourishing, happy, or you choose a cyanide and, we don't walk out of there, obviously. And so, these two options are, hyperbolic in terms of for illustrative purposes. But I want you to imagine then something similar. What if it was a matter of choosing slavery over freedom because freedom costs something? You can kind of see where this could go, a lot of different directions. But in terms of education, in order for us to avoid the folly of choosing the wrong thing, based on cost or based on value, the merit of the thing itself, we have to know what it is we're choosing, right? We have to know what our choices are. And so one of the choices in modern American education is the free public school system funded by the federal government, ultimately because funds pass down to the state if they follow all the right criteria and so on and so forth. And then the alternative is either homeschooling or private school that is going to cost something, right? It's going to take sacrifice, it's going to cost money, it's going to take time. And so what ends up happening is, in my opinion, a folly that many Christian families choose the modern American public school system over private Christian education simply because the government school is free. Now, some would argue and say, well, public schools aren't that bad. Some are worse than others. Sure, they are. However, if we understand what the modern public school system is versus what we might think of it when we think of the early colonial American public schools, we might have a different opinion, right? So, maybe the poison, there's different, gradation. There's a gradation in the quality of poisons, but it's ultimately always poison. And here's why I'm going to say that. Because in the early colonial Americas, the colonies, public schools were created, funded, and governed locally by communities of free people who believed that it was better for their community that everyone, including the poor who could not afford an education, everyone was educated to learn to be enlightened and virtuous. That's better for everyone. And so to levy a small tax that's governed by a local governing body, to hire a teacher to come in, usually offered at a church building in the community. A young lady would come in and teach, and so everyone would get an education, even if you couldn't afford it, at this local colonial public school. Okay, and that's not such a bad model. That wouldn't be a bad model at all, and I probably wouldn't be thinking the way I'm thinking if that's the way the modern public school system work today. But our modern public schools are actually government funded, Prussian modeled, designed for one thing, and that is to create consumers who are loyal to the state. That is the whole purpose. It's a nationalized school model we adopted, American educators adopted in the 19th century to serve the Industrial Revolution. So consider this. Have you ever wondered why almost all Americans across the board have some version of this American dream, right? You get a good job, you get up early, go to that job, you spend most of 40 plus hours a week, most of your life there all week long. You have the evenings and some weekends to yourself, but you can't quit that job. You only have so many sick days. And that's because you've got a 30-year mortgage, a 60-month car loan, a 10-year school loan perhaps, and as most Americans, or the average American today, has about $20,000 in consumer debt. So we have this lifestyle that we've developed that we have to keep up with it, and so this is how we keep up with it, by going to jobs like this. Now, there are a few people who escape that, but for the most part, this is the way the masses function. And it's no wonder if we go back and look at the school model that we all went to if we went to public school. You get up early, make your bed, have breakfast, and jump on the school bus and go off to school, spending about 30 hours a week away from home, plus extracurricular activities like band and football. And then we come home and do homework and fall into bed and have very little family time. The weekends are about the only time, a couple week vacation perhaps. And if you do really well, you'll get one of those good jobs that you will make enough money to put away some retirement so that when you're 65, you can begin to live life, okay? So it's not rocket science, but sometimes it can be hard to see our environment when it's something that we've always known. For example, the late secular philosopher David Foster Wallace tells a pretty funny little story about a couple of young fish that get up to go for a swim around their fishbowl. And in the midst of their little morning swim, they come across an older fish who greets them by saying, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" They smile and keep swimming, and one turns to the other and says, "What's water?" You see, when we have been swimming in the same environment our entire life, it's the air we breathe, so to speak, we don't really know any different. We don't know that there could be an alternative way of thinking that would produce an alternative way of life. And so in thinking about these things, I think there are a couple of steps we have to take if we're going to free ourselves. A couple of very obvious steps. The very first one is to acknowledge, recognize, and embrace the fact that we have been living out this model that was designed by someone else, designed to serve a particular end, a particular purpose. The robber barons of the 19th century designed this system, adopted the school system so that it could serve the American Industrial Revolution. And that's documented history, we know that. Now, sometimes what happens is a school will, someone will start a private school, not realizing that, we'll call it a Christian school or maybe even a classical Christian school, but by simply adopting Bible classes and chapel, then we think this is a Christian school, but we haven't left the model that, all we've done is add these things to a model that we still continue to work through. So it's, as someone, said about something else, it's like arranging deck chairs on the Titanic, hoping that that's going to, make a difference. So that's the first. We have to understand and recognize this system that we have, been living in, this way of thinking that we have grown up in that we don't even realize is affecting the way our life is going to go. The second is to recognize that anytime there is positive change, anytime we choose the good, it is going to cost us something. That is the way, of the cosmos. It costs something to get something good. Freedom costs. And if you're a parent thinking about how to break the cycle for your children, then think about what is it going to cost to give them the kind of education that a freeman would have, the kind of education that we traditionally have called liberal arts. Liberal not meaning political liberal, meaning freeing, freedom, the education of a free man who learns to think well about the world they live in and to live well, to live virtuously. And this actually speaks to the very phrase in the Declaration of Independence that we all know, but we may not even know what it means: the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Happiness there comes from the Greek word eudaimonia, the idea of a life well lived, a well-ordered soul. And so let me encourage you to muse on this a little bit, to think about the opportunities that you have. One of the reasons that I'm passionate about leading Kepler education, one of the most important endeavors I've been involved in, is because we are building a platform that allows parents to choose their own teacher. We are providing a platform so that good quality, classically trained Christian teachers can break out of the system that they're forced to teach in, and to be able to offer the kind of education that will help your child flourish and have a professional and private life well lived. I hope you'll come by and check us out at kepler.education, and feel free at any time to shoot me an email, scott@kepler.education, and I'd love to muse about this with you even more. God bless.